Let me just run through the order of events, or the rules of engagement. First of all, I will ask each candidate to speak for up to 1 minute to introduce themselves, and we will do that in alphabetical order, starting from Luke and running down the line. Then I will pause, and we will see if anybody wants to submit a question on the slips that you've been handed as you came in, who hasn't already submitted one. So I've got some questions already, but if anybody who hasn't submitted one wants to submit one, then you can, after the candidates have run through their introductory minutes. And in fact, during the evening, as candidates are answering questions, if anybody thinks of a question and wants to put one in, then if they just make themselves known, then we've got 1 or 2 staff who will be happy to collect questions and we'll add them to the pile. As far as answering the questions is concerned, the candidates will have up to 45 seconds to answer each question. And if they get to the 45-second limit, they will hear this noise, at which point they have been told in no uncertain terms they are to stop speaking. I can't turn their microphone off, but we'll find a way of stopping them if they carry on. The idea with the questions is that I will call out the name each time of the person whose question I want to call, and the person himself or herself will then ask the question. If you can't remember your question, then I could read it on your behalf. But the idea really is that the audience asks the questions. So I think that's enough from me. We can now make a start with the candidate speaking to you for up to 1 minute, and we'll start with Luke Graham.
Hello. I'm not like the rest of everyone who's pre-prepared something. It's quite simple what I stand for. I am an immigrant in Guernsey, but I want to keep Guernsey the way it is. I don't want it to change, and I want to protect its heritage, its culture, the way it's always been. I haven't got all these great ideas about tax reform or policies, or, there's a lot of cleverer people than me up here. But there needs to be someone in the States who is banging the drum and not scared of making difficult decisions and not in it to be liked. I don't care if I'm liked. I need to be effective. I want to make sure Guernsey doesn't lose its way, doesn't go like the UK. I've been here 18 years, and I remember leaving the UK in 2016. I don't want it to be like that. People talk about Tommy Robinson saying he's a racist, but in 2002 he started banging this drum, and it's the same thing. We can't just let our heritage go.
My name is Rob. I'm standing in this election, my 4th, because justice still matters to me. I'm standing on a single, very clear platform, namely public service reform. And why? Because every political decision depends on it. Evidence that change is needed is overwhelming. After challenging failings for nearly a decade, 17 families got together and told the Guernsey presses their voices were suppressed or silenced. The Guernsey Disability Alliance took 8 years to get an unlawful education policy removed. And then we have £20 million for MyGov, £30 million for hospital redevelopment, £42 million for IT transformation. The iceberg's visible. I've spent a career trying to drive culture change, first at an Oxford college, then an island school, in local sport here, and now at a Guernsey charity. You put constituency work first. You pursue truth with courage. You pursue justice with integrity. And you pursue community with compassion.
Apologies. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Sam Haskins. I'm 41, and I care deeply about Guernsey and its future. I'm anti-GST, I'm anti-big government, I'm pro-savings, and I'm pro-accountability. I'm standing knowing the role will be one of a backbencher role, at least to start, but that is where I think I can really help. I will focus squarely on savings, accountability, and reducing the cost of living. Essentially, I will earn my keep. As a previous deputy, I have experience I understand how the system works, and I can hit the ground running. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming, everybody. I'm Julianne Headington, and I'm a very proud Guernsey girl. I wasn't born into a privileged life. However, with the opportunities and the support I had from the community, I was able to build and run a successful financial services business for over 20 years. From my work in the voluntary sector, I see how hard it is for people to get things done. Many people feel that Guernsey isn't serving them the way it once used to. Through my business and voluntary work, I see how important it is for teamwork. And I want to ensure that the islanders, future generations, have the chances that I had. That's why I'm standing with Forward Guernsey, because 4 deputies working together as a team will achieve far more than 4 individuals working together. And right now, that's what this island needs, people pulling together to get things done. Thank you.
I felt over the last 10 years, while I've been really politically engaged, that our states hasn't represented people like myself from working class backgrounds who built things up from the ground up, like the Graham Gills, the Eric Walters and Dave Joneses. I was brought up in social housing, and I went on to build businesses in construction and utilities, employing nearly up to 400 people. That's given me real practical experience of how our economy works on the ground, not just on paper. I've campaigned for small businesses, for industrial space, for a visiting trader registration. I sat on ESS, and I've been working since the general election with committees to get issues like road safety onto the priorities to enable them to be worked on. I joined ESS to work on affordable housing, as I know what it's like to want to move on from renting. I believe we can deliver practical starter homes and improve our food resilience. Representation shouldn't start at election time. It should be consistent, active and deliver results. I've been putting in the work in already, and I'm eager to turn ideas into action for Guernsey.
Good evening. I'm Carl Meerveld. I served as a deputy for 9 years, from 2016 to last year. Unfortunately, I narrowly missed out at the last election. But the reason I'm putting myself forward again is because there are still things I'm very passionate about that have been left undone. I'm very much against GST. I want to find ways to grow our economy, whether it's through a wind farm or other ideas, to generate revenue that doesn't involve reaching into the pockets of our population and taking out money as we constantly see our cost of living increasing. I'm also very concerned about our young people leaving the island because they can't afford to live here anymore. So both cost of living and accommodation are major issues I want to look at, as well as pursuing reform of the civil service to stop them wasting the tens of millions of pounds that they are now trying to raise in GST, unfortunately, to fund a system that I think is broken. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm not going to stand as much as I would like to because I'm short, but I can't lift this very heavy mic. I consider myself an adopted daughter of Guernsey. I love it here. I've been here 30 years. I have built very strong foundations, particularly within regulation in the finance sector and working commercially. I set up the stock exchange here, amongst other things. I believe in a strong economy can be achieved, and it should be directed towards improving people's lives. Whilst I focused on building strong foundations in one sector, I've also worked very extensively in the charitable sector. I'm a director at Les Beaucamps, and I'm very passionate about all the important things that the charity sector here does, and I hope that we can achieve a much more strong partnership with government going forward. I'm increasingly concerned about how we're not focusing enough on delivery. We cannot just be a talking shop. We have to be able to have action plans that work. I have delivered successfully in business, and I can do the same.
Good evening, all. My name's Steve Rooksell. I'm a local lad from the Vale, educated at the Vale, St Sampson's, and what used to be the grammar school. Until recently, I was the CEO of probably one of the largest, definitely one of the largest asset management firms on the island, and I stood down from the presidency of the Chamber of Commerce to stand in this election. So, quick rhetorical question for all of you. Are you struggling with the cost of living? Are you worrying about your rent or your mortgage payments? Are you concerned about the global economy? If you are, you're not alone. Lots of people I've been speaking to over the last 6 weeks on the campaign trail have all made that their main theme. So I've put together a comprehensive suite of policies shaped with input from many of the islanders that I've met, some of whom are in this room today, that aim to inject real capital into the economy, to get small, medium-sized businesses thriving and open up opportunities for new start-up ventures. They aim to reset the economy and to pivot the economy. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Nikki Simmons, and I'm standing in this by-election because I want to offer a practical, thoughtful voice, and I believe I can make a real difference. I have experience working in the civil service, and I understand how government works. But more importantly, I understand the frustration many people feel when things just don't move quickly enough. That's why I won't make unrealistic promises. Instead, I'll focus on asking the right questions, challenging where needed, and helping to get things done. The issues I'm hearing are consistent. Housing is a real concern, especially for young people and working households, and we need to increase supply and make better use of what we already have. We can't ignore our public finances. Doing nothing isn't an option, and any decisions, whether on tax or spending, must be fair, balanced, and properly explained. At the same time, we need a strong economy.
Now, I'm concerned about Guernsey's long-term financial stability. That is irrespective of who's at fault, whether it's economic inefficiencies, waste, or demographics. It cannot be denied that Guernsey, like many Western economies, is facing significant challenges. Now, I sit before you as the only candidate who voted for every single tax increase last term, and I'm not afraid of saying that here today. Not because I think we can tax ourselves into prosperity, because the basic cost of providing services on this island is increasing, and we cannot afford to be poor. Too many elections of unattainable promises have led us to this very point. Now, I am a trained construction professional, and I have experience in both the design and delivery of housing, and I believe that experience will be very beneficial to the States. I am experienced in scrutinising proposals of the States, and I'm also experienced in bringing forward positive amendments that have both saved the island money and increased scrutiny in big spend areas. I want to secure Guernsey's best possible future for my children and all of you.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Wilson. I'm currently a company director, a parent, and until recently a rugby coach. Yesterday we read about £22 million of public money being lost without seemingly too much accountability. And now we're being asked to support a new tax administered by the same organisation. The deficit is real and growing. The housing crisis is real and growing. The cost of living squeeze is real and tightening. And these are not in dispute, but what I do dispute is that tax is the way out of this. It's not the answer. Guernsey sits in one of the highest tidal ranges in the world, and community-owned tidal power generates revenue, frees up the power station for housing, and ends our dependence on imported energy. So 3 problems, 1 solution, 0 tax at the checkout. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. What will happen with answering the questions is that the candidates will answer completely at random. So I have permutations of candidates to answer so that they will all answer questions without notice. The first question we will take is about healthcare funding and is to be asked by Mike Reed. Wait till there is a microphone, Mike. I should have said if anybody has any questions they've now thought of, please wave your slip around and we'll collect it.
Are you ready? Good evening, everyone. The HSE budget for 2026 was increased last year by 3.4%, rising to £261 million from £252 in 2025 to meet the ever-increasing demand-led pressures. In January this year, the states committed to achieving a 1% real terms annual reduction in budgets for 27, 28 and 29. If you were on the Committee for Health and Social Care, would you propose to achieve this by cutting services and increasing charges? If so, which services and charges? Or do you have another solution? Thank you.
Carl Meerveld.
Thank you. healthcare is always a very difficult issue and the costs are going up. But I want to see HSC look at different ways of delivering those services. I know that they have been approached by people suggesting that we actually contract with organisations outside of Guernsey and fly patients out there to other locations for operations, whether it be in the UK or around Europe. There are ways that we can deliver a better service, because the fact is we don't have real medical specialists on Guernsey. We can contract real experts that have broader-based skills and reduce our costs. I want to explore those kind of options rather than just pursuing ever-increasing costs.
Tamara Mentishvili.
I think you first have to divide what is covered under the health and social services sector. The elderly, the young, health, well-being, operations, all the spectrum. Once you do that, you have to then look at, and I particularly would like to see care in the community to keep people in their homes. As I said before, I'm a director at the hospice. I want to see more constructive cooperation in partnership with the volunteer sector. That would reduce costs and keep the expertise here on the island. In terms of wellness, I would look for wellness initiatives and fund it by opening up a new sector of wellness tourism, which is a global business of something in the order of about £17 billion. Why shouldn't we have that? We have clean air, we have everything here that we could use.
Andy Taylor.
So as a starting point, I wouldn't support cuts, certainly not at a time when demand for service is increasing and forecast to increase exponentially over coming years. Where I would see potential savings would be in potential new medicines that come to market and checking those really carefully to see whether they are going to be cost efficient to administer, if they will make savings in long term or short term, and basically limit the future services that we provide before making any cuts.
Jonathan Wilson.
I think health is where some of the cuts will be if we don't fix the deficit structurally. The health crisis and the fiscal crisis are largely the same crisis to me, and they're under the same pressure. Every small island faces the same issues, which are ageing population, particularly for us locally. We've got rising demand, and we've got a cost base that outstrips, that's growing faster than the economy. So I also wouldn't advocate stripping back any healthcare or any of the services that we provide. But I think we need a working age population contributing to the system. And you might hear that again from me, but I think the fiscal crisis...
Luke Graham.
Yeah. Of course I would cut. This is what I'm talking about. I'm not scared of saying what other people are scared to say. If you're not I don't know the true how we structure it, but we need to look after our own. If you're coming here on a short-term working permit to be a chef or to dig holes or to cut grass, then you can't just, if you're ill, you can't just use our system. But at the minute they can, so there's not proper checks on population management and the people who are coming here. We want healthy people who are good workers, not people who are ill, who are costing us money because we've got to pay for them. So stop all that. Simple.
Nikki Simmons.
I also wouldn't support cuts in health. I think, again, with an ageing population, there's going to be more demand on health. I think it's about being smarter how we work and being more efficient, but also looking at more preventative care, social prescribing, and using partnerships with other people who already provide services. I know we do that a lot, but that's incredibly beneficial. And I see those partnerships are massively supportive to our health system going forward and should be nurtured and encouraged. So I wouldn't actually support any immediate cuts to budget on health, especially.
Stephen Ruxell.
I couldn't possibly comment on cuts because, much like the committee themselves, I have no idea what services they provide that are critical, important but could be restructured or nice to have. Until that kind of assessment has been done, there is absolutely no way anybody could comment on cuts. To the second part of your question, how would you reduce costs? I'd certainly like to see more prevention. So Activate is a prevention initiative that is currently, I believe, underfunded, although I'm happy to be corrected on that. It's that prevention that I think is really necessary to drive down things like obesity, over-reliance on smoke, people who smoke, all of those things. What we need to do is prevent rather than cure.
Rob Harnish.
I support universal health care. In 2014, the supported living report gave us 3 quick wins. Only one of them has been implemented, or at least started in 2024, and that was doing a commissioning lead. 2 years into the commissioning strategy, we're still not being commissioned. I represent a charity that's offering £1 million of savings to healthcare, and it's hard to get taken up. We have 2 other easy wins. The first is to bring in innovation. AI diagnostics is going to be absolutely crucial for every jurisdiction dealing with an aging population. And we also have to listen to our public health lead, Nikki Brinks, and actually strengthen our public health strategies. It's easy.
Ross LeBrun.
I think, I wouldn't support cuts before we look at something like moving away from agency fees. That's probably one of the biggest costs that health has got, and we need to train our own nurses and incentivise that as a career option and help them with housing as well. And with 45 seconds, there's no point in trying to expand on that.
Julianne Headington.
I wouldn't recommend any cuts. I'd work within the current budget. We need to progress the supported living and wellness strategy. We need to support our elderly, keep them out of the hospitals. Also, with the primary care review, look at this £12 subsidy that the states assist with. How was it come up with, and is it even still fit for purpose? Also, as Nikki said, social prescribing, and also collaborate with Jersey so we don't duplicate work.
Sam Haskins.
Thank you, and it's a really great question, actually. And the problem that you're outlining is compounded because you have medical inflation that is over and above inflation. So countries all over the world have to be really, really careful with how they deal with this. One of the things that I am hopeful of is AI that can bring down health costs in general. But other points mentioned are things like helping people stay in their homes for longer. That is something that I do think we need to really, really focus on. Another idea, as you said, is that we introduce a compulsory health insurance scheme for those coming to the island. I think that would reduce.
Okay. The next question is about the sixth form centre and is going to be asked by Mick Fuchs. Mick Fuchs.
Good evening. It transpires that a raft of civil servants, public sector service staff, have been able to be accommodated at Les Beaucamps site, where apparently there was no room to plan to upgrade a purpose-built sixth form facility, resulting in the sixth form, making up of Guernsey's future, moving to the Lamar de Carteret for seemingly an open-ended number of years. Can the candidates provide a view how this has been allowed to happen and whether they believe a purpose-built sixth form centre should be built at Les Osway campus at what is projected to be a figure of some £50 million plus?
Thank you. Ross LeBrun.
I don't know how long people's memories are, but in 2020 there was candidates that actually campaigned to have 3 schools and a separate sixth form centre, so people have actually voted for what we've got now. Unfortunately, if we want to change things, it's going to disrupt things again. And how many people in here have got the appetite to go through all that again? If we're not happy with where the sixth form is, it's going to need to look at the model again, because we can't afford to build the new sixth form centre. So I don't know what the answer is without causing massive disruption again.
Stephen Ruxell.
Yeah, I'd have to echo Ross's comments there. I couldn't possibly give a view any other way other than to say it was an election mandate that was given to the last ESC, and that's why we've ended up what we've got. Personally, I think what we really need to be concentrating on is educational strategy with educational pathways. I think we need to see a devolution of governance. I'd like to see excellent and support pathways brought back. I think in the push for equal outcomes, this has been lost in the noise. I'm told by teachers that I've spoken to that the 2017 redesign of the curriculum is viewed by many teachers as a backward step and needs to be revisited. So I think if we want better education, we need to be listening to our teachers and forget about the real structural problems. From a structural point of view, I want to see the most cost-effective outcome.
Nikki Simmons.
So I was in favour for a sixth form centre to be built, but with the ever-expanding costs of the project, I now don't think that the government has the money to put into that, unfortunately. And I think it comes down to a lot of the problems that we've seen across the board with project planning. And that you may start a project with good intention, but the delays and with projects spread across committees working in silos and not making decisions to move projects on, what happens is costs escalate, so that when you're looking again, picking the piece of work up again, costs have gone through the roof and we then can't afford it. So I think a lot of it is about being much tighter and much more careful with budgeting and planning and project management.
Tamara Mentishvili.
There's probably three streams that I can think of in terms of the education system here, which I didn't grow up in. Reflects very much what's in the UK. I grew up in New York. I don't think for a moment that we can look at it as a holistic problem. We have buildings that are failing us. We have curriculum that is allowing, from what I hear, 300 families have taken their children out of school. Specifically to the sixth form, it's a very academic pursuit. I'd like to see a mixture of apprenticeships and other types of initiatives to take the adults, the young adults, away from one vocational path or an academic path and integrate them more socially. What are we going to do about that sixth form? I just don't know.
Julianne Headington.
Hi, Mick. Thanks for the question. I wouldn't have moved to Lamar. I would have kept them at the Varond. We need to ensure that our children are in an environment where they can thrive, and moving them around the island like pieces on a chessboard is not good enough. So a decision needs to be made and needs to be stuck to.
Rob Harnish.
I taught in Guernsey for 15 years. If we actually want to deliver on a single sixth form centre according to the mandate, there are other options. Scandinavian prefabs save us an awful lot of money, and they're very, very well designed. But wouldn't it be better to reinvest that money instead in our teaching staff? Some of the best schools in the world are in grass huts, and I think we might be focusing in the wrong area. Put the money into the people.
Sam Haskins.
Another really good question. I'm glad you're keeping us all accountable. But there has been, in my eyes, too much political interference in the whole of the educational system. You asked for a view on whether or not they should have moved. I think it was a decision by Policy and Resources, and that was in conjunction with Agilicis. And I know little more than that. What I do know is that education, the whole system, needs stability. And I'm very pleased with my role on the governing boards and the setting up, because I know that I've had teachers tell me just how much stability that those are adding, and they're focusing on outcomes and not buildings.
Carl Meerveld.
Thank you. I want to see the students get their sixth form centre back. I'd like to see the civil servants move to a different location. I'd like to see a split campus between the Osway site and the Varon site with a short walk in between, just as many universities in the UK do. I think that you would have then the practical lessons taught at the Varon site, where they have the classroom for cooking, building, construction, etc., and have the academic classrooms at the old Lavron site, and that's the way we should be utilising that space. And then you have the same students mixing at a sixth form level across whether they're academic path or practical path. They're mixing together using a shared campus. Thank you.
Luke Graham.
I think, I don't know about anyone else, but even my school, back when I was in school, we had like buckets under drips. It was freezing. Like, look at this place. Kids don't know how good they've got it nowadays. We need to stop thinking about building new schools and new special sixth form centres. We need to make kids resilient, not sitting in super air conditioned, beautiful places. So I think we should just keep it as it is and work with what we've got.
Jonathan Wilson?
I think we can't fail our children. I think the sixth form centre needs to be there. I think we can't split families up if the kids need to go somewhere to study, whether that's the UK or somewhere else. Why would we not allow them to continue in a sixth form centre to do their A-levels and to be a part of building something within Guernsey that's good, solid, and gives them a foundation for life? I think they have to have a sixth form centre, and I think we need to find the money for it.
Andy Taylor.
I think it's a disgrace, the situation we find ourselves in, but in the face of declining pupil numbers, or forecasted pupil numbers, I don't think the answer is in a new built form. I think that's unachievable. Given we have 3 private colleges on the island offering post-16 education, and they're going to face the same issues with declining numbers, I believe that may represent an opportunity to find a mutually beneficial solution for both the states and the private sector.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions that they want to submit? There is a gentleman, Mr. Dyke. Right, the next question is about tax from Sandra James.
Thank you, Matt. I hurriedly scribbled my question, so forgive me if I don't repeat it word for word. It's the old chestnut, I hate to say, but GST. And I wonder how the panel members think that the Guernsey people can be convinced that GST is the right way for us to go. And the reasoning behind my question is what has already been mentioned this evening, is the gross waste of public money that we've seen, not to mention the 21 million, I've forgotten how many millions it was, where the health and social care went over budget. More recently, we've had the Leopardess, its refit, came in an extra £250,000. And I really genuinely think that the Guernsey people wants a degree of responsibility from this current government and future candidates. Thank you.
Okay, John Dyke's question is so similar that I'm going to read it out, if I may, John, and the candidates can address this at the same time. Your question is, there will shortly be a vote to implement GST. Will you vote in favour or against, and why? Stephen Ruxell.
I would be a no unless. I've got several things here, several of them I've already covered, such as growth and investment into small, medium-sized businesses through a change to the tax cap that would see money required to get access to the tax cap and invested into a Guernsey domicile fund managed by fund managers. Safeguarding the economy, I'd want to see an economic health check to ensure that islanders can actually afford a new tax if we bring it in. I'd want to see trust rebuilt in the government. I want to see principal committees actually understand all the costs that they have through a mechanism, as I described earlier, critical, important that can be restructured and nice to have, so that they at least know what the services they've got.
Andy Taylor.
I suppose to answer your question, how can we or the public be convinced it's a good idea? I'd say the answer is with difficulty, and we probably should have started trying to convince you about 2 years ago. But whilst I don't disagree with the concerns you raised about wastage and inefficiencies, a lot of those, we need to be addressing those, but they pale in insignificance to the amount that we need to be raising. So it's got to be an all-of-the-above approach. We need to make those savings and those efficiencies save on the wastage, but we still need to increase our island's revenues.
Rob Harnish.
GST is regressive. It affects the poorest most. I don't support it at all. The plus that's offered is a short-term fix, and it's absolutely not sustainable if you look at the build-up in terms of what it costs in social security. Are there solutions? Yes. You look at the fiscal policy report of 2025 and you discover that we have a very high GDP per capita and we spend out of that GDP less per person than almost every other jurisdiction in the world. We do need to spend more. We need to bring that income in, but we need to bring it in sustainably. And I'm afraid that means either territorial tax or income tax or business tax. I don't see it being sustainable to bring in a VAT, essentially.
Sam Haskins.
When you ask, is it, can Guernsey, can the deputies convince you? I'm not sure they can. Not right now, definitely not right now, because of all this waste that's going on. Because I think that's what people are asking for is, there's too much waste. Why aren't you guys looking at that? And it's clear, because there is not enough accountability in there. I have outlined some savings that I think could help. But let me give you one statistic. We've had almost 20 years' worth of population growth in 2 years. That's a lot.
Jonathan Wilson.
I don't like it. I wouldn't try to persuade you to vote for GST at all. I think until, as the first resort, it's a bit of a blunt instrument. Until we look at things like growth and investment, it doesn't work at all. At the moment, we're looking at, I think, £56 million is the deficit. It's a real deficit. It's a real black hole. By the end of this year, it might be closer to 100 million. GST isn't coming in until, I think, the first quarter of 2028, according to the Civil Service at the moment. What's it going to be by then? Maybe 200 million. If we've got 5% the same as Jersey, then I think that it raises somewhere in the region of £50 million, which is an instalment at that level. So where's the rest of it going to come from?
Nikki Simmons.
So I think GST obviously is the thorny issue of the last election, the thorny issue of this one. I think GST is already on the table. I think the current sitting deputies have already put their mind to it and are now looking at, obviously, the corporate tax review that's coming out shortly. It's a very difficult one, and I think it's made up of many parts. I think we have such a big black hole of 100 million that any other options we're putting forward at the moment will just take too long to fill that hole. And I don't think we're in a position to wait. I think to keep our services running and to keep the health service running and to keep everything we're used to or expected to, we need to raise taxes. And GST is spread out. It's a consumer tax, so visitors pay it, corporates pay it.
Carl Meerveld.
Thank you. I should have brought my flag with me. I think most people here know I have opposed and fought against GST since day one. I want to fund our services through economic growth and diversification, not by increasing our tax take. I believe the losses that states incurs through mismanaged projects and inefficiencies runs to the tens of millions of pounds a year. I think the government needs to address that and persuade the public that they can handle the money they receive properly. I also am not convinced we have a black hole of 100 million. We made another 30 million they didn't expect this in this last fiscal year. And nobody can read the state's accounts. No accountant can tell me what the deficit is. Thank you.
Tamara Mentishvili.
Without repeating what everyone has said, I'm absolutely dead against it. I've always been concerned about the way the tax services are managed here, but that's another story. What you probably are not aware of, or some of you may be aware of, is that 15% corporate rate tax is now mandated across all OECD countries. That includes us. We've already signed up to it. Where is that factored into anything that they've prepared to project going forward? There's no cohesion to anything that I've seen to explain where this deficit has come from when we're sitting on nearly billions worth of property, billions worth of things that could be securitized. All these things are, without any credibility in my view.
Luke Graham.
No to GST. I think there's much better ways of doing it. The big players are making their money here. They're using Guernsey for what it gives them, financial advantages. And I think we need to realise how good of a place this is. This is the best place in the world. We need to treat it that way. Like, look at Dubai now. No one wants to live there anymore. They're all on about moving to Guernsey or Jersey or, you know, wherever else, but they don't want to be there. And no one wants to be in the UK. So if anyone wants to be here doing their thing, we need to charge them for the privilege.
Julianne Headington.
Hi, Sandra. I'm not in favour of GST, but we need a long-term plan to fix our financial situation. I don't think it's fair to put the burden on the current workforce and tax them more because our workforce is shrinking. Whatever the plan is, we need a fairer tax system that protects the middle and lower income earners. I'm hoping that any proposal that's put forward through, that's going to be talked about in July, is going to be a good one that we can actually vote on because we can't keep kicking the can down the road.
Ross LeBrun.
I'm not convinced GST is the answer. I'm only reassured that the mitigations would protect the lower earners if we had to go for that to keep some kind of income coming in to keep public services going. I'm more against public services reducing than I am against a new tax because someone's got to pay for it. It's wishful thinking to think that we can turn around the economy that fast, that we're going to get the money we need. I've got ideas myself to actually get the social security payments from visiting traders, which potentially brings in over $1 million to the States, but that's not going to touch the sides. There is going to need to be something else, and hopefully the Fair Tax Group can think of something, because we are just going to be one person out of 40. There's going to be 39 other votes on this, so there's some responsibility back there. Also, I'd like to see scrutiny have some more powers to...
The next question will be asked by Merrick Simmons and is topical about states' IT projects.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My question is a very simple one. If you'd been put in charge of the state's IT Agilicis project, what specific actions would you have put in place to ensure that the project was delivered according to the tender, on time and within budget?
Julianne Headington.
I ran my own business for over 20 years, and I'm appalled by the state that it's got into. I would have had regular meetings, look at the expenses, look at the budgeting, look at the time plan, and if they didn't get to a certain point within the time frame, why? Why not? Why isn't it working? To keep going on and on and on. And I think from what I've read, optimism, possibly, and not listening to other staff, led to the overspend. Scrutiny, planning, budgeting.
Carl Meerveld.
Thank you. I think Agilicis is just one example. We've seen the MyGov project, we've seen the tax service upgrades. The civil service are not capable of running projects in a commercial way. We have an incredible resource in this island of the entrepreneurs with incredible business skills. They'd be willing to volunteer their time to help oversee and manage this as non-executive directors. We should be bringing expertise in from outside the States, from business people, not administrators, to run projects properly and make sure that contracts are delivered against and the contracts are right in the first place. Thank you.
Ross LeBrun.
I think what it would have needed is a real central project manager to actually overlook the whole thing. From what I've read, it was managed between lots of different groups, which is like not passing the buck as such, but they were all. It was very disjointed. I've never managed a project of that size. I'm not going to pretend I have, but it needed some better central management, really.
Stephen Ruxell?
I think from looking at it from my perspective, I think the main issue they had was firstly in the tender process and poor governance. Secondly, when outsourcing, they didn't follow the simple 80-20 rule. You can only outsource 80% of anything that you do. You need to retain 20% of the oversight to ensure that things are done properly. I think really the big word here missing is accountability, and I think that's because within the state's civil service code, the word accountability does not appear anywhere. And that's a hangover from the old UK code, which has been since updated. And I think that's really where we need to start. The word accountability needs to be embedded within the civil service for delivering on operational projects.
Jonathan Wilson.
So for me, the word is governance, actually, as well as accountability. So much better governance. The contract needed to be specific, measurable, delivered on time, have go, no-go meetings all the time. The suppliers should not have been on the board of the company that assessed the suppliers. That's a crucial one. So the conflict of interest was there. And what has changed since? We're discussing super priorities, and we could easily fall into the same trap. And if it was the States of Guernsey law officers that signed off on the contracts, they have 34 people earning more than £85,000. If they're worth their salt, they should have gone through these contracts, gone through it on a timely basis, and looked at governance on a periodic basis.
Sam Haskins.
One of the major problems was in that procurement where you had an unclear definition of responsibilities. That's if everyone is responsible, then no one is responsible. So that's important to set that up right from the get-go. I think there wasn't a culture of challenge. I think if I was there, I definitely am very analytical and pretty good with numbers. So I think the challenge that I would have given, you can sugarcoat it, I will ask and I will dig deeper. But one really interesting fact is that senior leadership is excluded from the civil service discipline and capability policies. So there's a lack there of accountability.
Andy Taylor.
Well, we're saying this with the benefit of hindsight, but in terms of what I would have done to be able to deliver it or bring it in on budget, I don't think there's anything I could have done. I think the desire and the aims were completely unachievable. I think that no one at the time appreciated how poor and how behind our IT services were. So we were trying to do too much in one go. We just bit off more than we can chew, and it's bitten us in the backside. So I don't think there's anything I could have done differently, other than if I had more say, probably would have seen the red flags earlier on, because the red flags were there. It's taken a whole term to not get the new planning portal online. The signs were there, and it just needed someone to pull the can on it a lot earlier.
Nikki Simmons.
So I think the main problem with the project, and a lot of the projects that the big projects are undertaken, is, again, it was my point earlier, the projects are spread too thin around too many different people and too many committees. So for me, it's about refocusing that and about having people who are experts in their field actually project managing these massively expensive projects. So I think clearer accountability, a chief executive maybe brought back to oversee the real governance understanding of the projects within the principal committees, and I think much stronger project lines and project management. And I think maybe senior management should have nipped it in the bud earlier instead of letting the project overrun and overrun.
Rob Harnish.
Please see harnish.gg day 28, which is today, because I've just written a very long blog on this topic. The two key words are responsibility and accountability. Responsibility is forward-looking, accountability backward-looking. The chief executive has taken responsibility. I'm concerned that just imposing structural changes to create accountability won't be enough without the culture change I stand for, and I'm ready and already talking with him. In terms of accountability, that backward-looking thing has to happen. Justice has to be seen to be done, and those who have made wrong choices have to be held to account so that they can learn and actually not repeat the mistakes, which is what we've been doing for a decade now.
Tamara Mentishvili.
This is not the first time that we've seen a project that is not fit for purpose. I could look at the construction of the airport as an example, where you were supposed to have all sorts of things in place to make this a viable proposition. I come back to contractual obligation, which was mentioned earlier. If legally they're held to account on the delivery of whatever service they're providing, whether it's in this instance IT or any other project, any overspend is down to them, not down to you as taxpayer. So I think first and foremost is the legal framework under which any procurement is done, because we don't have a proper treasury function, as I said before. Risk management, how do you look at things?
Luke Graham.
I think all the overspend in the civil service is to do with this woke ideology of where you can't raise your voice anymore because if, you know, they'll get the ump and sign off work for 2 weeks, or, you know, back in the day when I was learning and back in the day when many of you were learning, sometimes you needed that. Are you taking the piss? That little, and it makes you better, but if nobody's got the minerals in the middle management to actually put the neck on the block and go, look, mate, I'm not here to be your friend. You know, are you reaching your targets? Well, they haven't, none of them, and they're all scared, and I would be as well if I was employed by the states, because you're going to get suspended or whatever else. So I think it's all to do with that, all the regulation around and red tape around how you speak to people and what you're allowed to do.
Okay, the next question will be from Ellis Bebb and is related to discrimination legislation.
Thank you. During this term, the deputies will be deciding on legislation about discrimination, especially in relation to sex. And therefore, I'd like to ask each candidate, do they believe a person can change their sex, and what is their definition of a woman?
That's a good one.
Rob Harnish.
We may have a different point of view. I think there's a clear distinction to be made between sex and gender. I think binary sex is already problematic. We do have intersexed people in our community, but I think the gender issue is a completely separate issue. It's about how we show respect for individuals' personal experience. That doesn't mean I'm instantly in favour of open spaces for everybody, but it does mean that this conversation has to be carried out with more respect than it has seen in some quarters.
Luke Graham.
I'll be careful how I word this, be attacked.
Just say you disagree with me.
Yeah. No. I've got to be careful how I word this in case I'm attacked for being a phobic of something. I seem to be phobic everything, me. I'm scared of everything. Like, I'm all for the gays. Like, they've gone through a lot of hardship, do you know what I mean? And they're still gay, and they're fair play to them, because it's different now. This transgender thing is rammed down people's throats, and it's just beyond a joke now, isn't it? I mean, come on, you know, it's something to do with the person's mental health. They're telling you that they're lying. Do you know, that's my bedtime. They're lying. They're saying I'm something that I'm not. We're teaching our children that it's okay to lie.
Nikki Simmons.
I just think everybody should be treated with dignity and respect, regardless. Everybody's owed that. Everybody is free to be who they want to be. So I wouldn't dare comment and say anything about what I thought a woman should be or gender should be. I feel I'm completely neutral. I think everybody deserves respect and should be seen for who they are.
Ross LeBrun.
I'm probably going to get this the wrong way around, but if sex means what you were biologically born as, then no, you can't physically change that. I believe there are people that are intersex and that they have been born in the wrong body, but this is very, very uncomfortable as a candidate to have to talk about stuff like this when you're not really that educated on it, and you're trying not to offend anyone. What is a woman? Well, my mum is a woman, my partner is a woman. Other than that, it's not something I'm really... I'm not a gender specialist.
Sam Haskins.
So an answer to number 1 was no. The answer to number 2 was adult human female. And whether I would support a policy letter or not, I mean, I don't know what's in the policy letter. But the one thing that has almost been said but hasn't really is everybody has the right to feel safe and not be discriminated against.
Stephen Ruxell.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. Everyone has the right to dignity and safety. I would say I've discussed the matter at length with Liberate today, as it happens, and for personal reasons, I'm not going to say anything further.
Jonathan Wilson.
I believe that there are two sexes at birth, generally speaking. I believe that everything should be as private as people want it to be. Certainly, everybody gets to act or deserves respect and dignity. I also believe that there should be female spaces only for protection and safety. I believe that female sports should be for people born a female. So, for instance, I was a rugby coach, and I love watching both male and female rugby. We got the Red Roses playing on Saturday again, and if there was somebody born a male playing in a female rugby game, you could imagine what
Tamara Mentishvili.
I did receive a question, as I think all of us did, from, I think it's called Liberate.
Huh?
And the question was the very one that you asked. I'm going to read you what I answered. I said, in all democracies, people should have the full protection of the law, human rights, and the rights of citizenship without censorship or discrimination. That community that was being referred to is an integral part of our society and are equal in my eyes to enjoy and pursue their lives openly and without fear. Having said that, I think there should be safeguards, because you don't know and you can't know whether somebody entering a public space or entering into sports are misusing drugs to create and enhance their capabilities and or endangerment.
Andy Taylor.
So what is the definition of a woman? I'd probably align with Mr. Lebrun on that, a human with ovaries, but I'm not going to get too technical on it. Can you change your sex? No, I don't believe you can change your sex, but I think you can outwardly appear different to the way you were born, and I would embrace that, and I think you can act in a different way to the way you were born. I've got no issue with that. But I don't deny that it does create a bit of a technical issue when it then rubs up against sex discrimination legislation. I'm not entirely sure what else I can say on that, because it would depend on the exact area of discrimination. What is, apart from the sex part, in what way is someone being discriminated against, to understand how sex really becomes an issue. All I can say is I'd approach it with an open mind.
Julianne Headington.
Hi, we've already had the Old Bailey court ruling last year about sex is determined by your biological sex at birth. Regarding gender, I don't think it's fair to prejudge anybody by what gender they choose to be. I do believe that there should be safe spaces for everybody. I understand the fears that biological sex will have, because I work at victim support. Regarding the sports, I believe that the Olympic Committee have already ruled that biological men or women can only take part in those sports and not any transgender. It is difficult, but it's a changing world and we've got to adapt. But again, we mustn't prejudge and also rely on our own experiences.
Carl Meerveld.
Thank you. I think it's important not to confuse sex with gender. I believe there are only two sexes, and it's determined at birth genetically. I believe that I certainly support the idea of women-only spaces and men being excluded from women's sports. At the same time, there are people who don't feel comfortable in their skin as they were born, and I have no problem with people who want to identify as a different gender. But that cannot override the rights of other people to want to have a safe space for females or even for males. That you have to distinguish between what is genetic and what is perceived.
The next question about how attractive Guernsey is for young people is going to be asked by Mr. Perry. I think it's Mathieu Perry. I apologise if that's the wrong pronunciation.
Good evening. With so many young people leaving the island and with the young people remaining in Guernsey finding it difficult to buy a home and put down roots here and the birth rate decreasing, what do you think the state should do to encourage young people to stay on the island and put down roots here? Thanks.
Sam Haskins.
I think it boils down to three things. I think young people, I think it's all people, to be honest. Opportunity. So we all want the opportunity for a good job, to do something that we want to do, that ideally that we do something that we love and it doesn't feel like work. The next one would be future. I need to look forward to the future and think, I can see myself living there, right, in the future with a partner and a house. So those two things, obviously policies around them are important. The third one is a life worth living. So that is all the bits of Guernsey. Guernsey is great, and I can go sailing, I can go swimming, I can do all of these.
Jonathan Wilson.
It's got to be couched in terms that we are a small island and we can't cater to everybody. But we do excel in some respects, particularly sport, music, various other things. I think that what you've just heard is correct as well. The aspiration to buy a house, to bring up a family here, is it likely to be possible? Are we at 15 times an average salary to buy a house? I think things like the sixth form centre has to be sorted out, just to hark back to that, because there needs to be progression. There needs to be something aspirational for us to look forward to and for kids to look forward to something, and also for them to feel like they are part of something. So to have Guernsey running through their veins, they wouldn't consider going anywhere else, not splitting up families, and just...
Tamara Mentishvili.
I would look specifically at guidance and available resources to steer youngsters into a career path, which they may not or may not want or may not understand. There used to be all sorts of career apprenticeship type meetings with industries, whether it be construction, finance, nursing, etc. I think skills development, supporting all aspects of talent here, whether it be arts, technology, vocational routes, and also a structured initiative for well-being, whether that be clubs, understanding of their needs and requirements, and what age group are we talking? If we're talking 16 to 25 specifically.
Andy Taylor.
Well, I haven't actually seen data, although I don't deny it is likely an issue, data to decide or show exactly how many young people are leaving and the age range for them. I'd say the answer to maintaining them or keeping them here is to provide a future. That can be done in many ways through affordable housing and employment opportunities. But perhaps that's a problem we will never solve. So perhaps we're better off embracing them leaving. After all, we've only got to look at some of our population issues now, which are arising because people are returning to the island and bringing their families home with them. So perhaps the problem is actually just it's part of Guernsey's cycle. We'll never change it, and we could just embrace it.
Carl Meerveld.
They have to be able to see that they've got a future in this island, that they can have the lifestyle that most of us have enjoyed. They've got to be able to know that they can have a decent career here. We need to diversify the economy and create more well-paying jobs outside of finance. They need to be able to know they can buy a house or rent a property relatively cheaply. We have to increase our property supply and try and get lower-priced first-time buyer houses. And they have to be able to know they can afford to bring up a family here. So cost of living is a major issue, and we need to look at addressing that as well. I think that combination of things, to be able to have them see their future in Guernsey and be able to enjoy that lifestyle. Unfortunately, our cost of living, lack of diversity of job opportunities and accommodation is an issue.
Julianne Headington.
Hi, Matthew. I believe we need to grow our own with apprenticeships and in-house training. For those university students, some sort of relocation package to bring them home like we do with essential workers that come over. And when they're here, additional earned allowance whereby the first £100,000 they earn, they don't pay tax on, and the £20,000 goes into a Guernsey property savings tax to help them towards renting or buying. Scrap document duty on first-time buyers under £600,000. But for me, everybody wants a place to call home, and personally, I'm proud to call Guernsey my home, and we need to encourage young people to stay and support them to come back as well.
Ross LeBrun.
My son's still in primary school. If nothing changes at the minute, he's going to still have the same problems when he's an adult. The fundamental issue is that the supply isn't keeping up with demand. We can't wait for the private sector, and I do believe that the state should become a developer again, and that would be States housing. And also I do have an idea for affordable to buy starter home units that could be done by the states, and that was based on working backwards from the Jersey living wage, because Guernsey doesn't have one. So I went to a friend and I said, how could we build something that someone with this much could afford to buy? And we worked backwards and we did come up with something, but it's whether or not the states have got the appetite to do that. But I've got the appetite.
Luke Graham.
I think, where are our kids going to go? Dubai, the UK, Australia? No, I mean, encourage them to go to uni and see a bit of the world. But I think if they've got any sense, and parents have got any sense, they'll be educating the kids in the fact that this is the best place in the world. It's the safest, it's the most beautiful. You get everything here. You know, it's easier to stand out in Guernsey. You're a small fish in a small pond rather than a small fish in a big pond. But safety, there's wars happening, you know. People are coming back here who moved to Dubai. People are coming back here who moved to the UK. So if our kids have got any sense, they'll stay here and make a life for themselves here.
Stephen Ruxell.
Kids have been leaving for many, many years. It was a big problem even when I was a child. One of the things I think we need to do, though, is to create opportunity, which is why I'm calling for a change to the high net worth tax cap to require investment into startups, small and medium-sized enterprise. Startups for those university students returning, small and medium-sized businesses to keep people having an opportunity to grow within the island. And it grows our economy and diversifies it away from the finance sector, because not all kids want to work in finance, unsurprisingly. It is a little dull.
Rob Harnish.
Young children and young adults move to pursue job opportunities and to pursue university places. So there are two key strategies we have to pursue if we want young people on the island, and not just to age to be the next group of old people, so that there's a steady supply of young people on the island. We have to increase the attractive corporate offering, and I think that's what I've just heard. It's really important. And I think we should still be pursuing that proposal that's been on the table for about 15 years now, of developing our university sector so that there are actually university places that attract young people to learn, study, and move into careers here.
Nikki Simmons.
So I do agree with a lot of what's already been said, but I think we could start slightly earlier while children are in sixth form, and opening up more opportunities for them to do work experience in some of the big companies over here, and that includes States of Guernsey, Specsavers, so they can get a real taste and a flavour for maybe a vocation that they'd like to follow. So if they do go to university, they've still got that in their mind to come back. They've already forged a relationship with a company over here that might say, we know you, we'd like to have you back once you've been to university. I'm a big fan of apprenticeships and trainee schemes. I know, for example, a lot of my son's friends haven't left to go to university. They've taken up positions here to train and decided not to leave because it's very attractive to...
John Liu has a question about immigration.
Guernsey isn't getting any bigger. Do the people on this who hope to be states members agree with the present state's policy that the economy should be increased by increasing the population with non-local people?
Luke Graham.
Absolutely not. We've already got a population problem. Guernsey's already losing its heritage, losing the history of what makes Guernsey Guernsey. It's the community, I can't even explain it. I couldn't even explain to you what makes Guernsey Guernsey, but we all know, sat here, we've all seen it, we've all lived here the last however many years, and it's not going in the right direction, and that's exactly what I stand for. And if you think like me, then you need to vote for me, because if I don't get in, then this is never going to change. It's just going to be more jobs for the boys and everyone wanting to say what keeps, they can't walk outside. I don't care what I'm saying. I'll hold my head high everywhere to go, and I'll still say the same thing. No, we don't need to keep importing people.
Tamara Mentishvili.
Population control has varied since I've been here. I came here on an essential license to bring a skill set that wasn't here. It's a tremendous opportunity for me. I would look to the employers in all the sectors. What do they need? What do the construction workers need? What do employers within nursing and so on? And make sure that we have training programs to grow our own if we need to build on talent here. But more specifically, sometimes you do have to import talent. None of these people can come here without a house to live in or a facility of some sort. And maybe we can bind that with the employers who take them on so that they can actually provide housing coverage and costs.
Carl Meerveld.
I don't agree with the state's immigration policies at the moment. You cannot grow your economy by importing people. Jersey's tried that, and look at the size of their population now. The problem we've got is the island's not getting any bigger. We're increasing the density of population, but those people that we import will then get older and demand those same services in their retirement and medical services, etc. You need to increase the productivity of the island, which is through economic diversification and looking at attracting other industries that actually produce more revenue by being more productive. That's how you grow the economy, not simply by increasing the number of people on the island. Thank you.
Nikki Simmons.
I think one of the main issues is that licences are given out on demand. So if there's a big call for, say, cafe workers, licences given out for those. I don't think we have a really comprehensive population future-proof management policy. I think we need to decide what Guernsey is and what we want it to be and how many people we expect to come in to live here. I don't think at the moment it's clear. As I say, it's very reactive, so I think we just need to do a lot more work on deciding how and who comes here. But I do think there are certain jobs and skills that we do need to bring people over, for doctors, specialists, but we just need to be very careful with how many permits we're actually handing out.
Rob Harnish.
The ideal population size depends exactly on your view of what the ideal island lifestyle looks like, and therefore what our ideal economy is. We lack a vision for a sustainable economy, and all I have to say is that a constant talk about growth, growth, growth is really a constant talk about cancer, cancer, cancer. At some stage you have to say this is the ideal size, and this is what a healthy, sustainable economy looks like that fulfills all of our needs and makes this the most wonderful place to live in the world, which is what I believe too, Luke.
Yeah.
Ross LeBrun.
We will always need incoming staff to cope, but I never agreed with using population growth to increase the economy. It's basically a pyramid scheme, because the more people you come in, the more public services they need, and it puts demand on everything, and not just in the future for care, but right now on the utilities, on the roads, and everything that we need to use to survive is being increased a lot more, and it's not keeping up with it, and that's why things aren't coping at the moment.
Julianne Headington.
At the moment, we don't know how many people are actually on this island. There is no overarching body that controls immigration, population management, tax and health. They don't talk to each other. So when people are coming in, are they even doing the jobs that they're supposed to be doing? Are they even living where they're supposed to be living? People are coming in under the radar as well. So from that perspective, I think some people are being exploited. But from a local perspective, we need to, as Tamara said, we need to grow our own. We need to make sure that the local people receive the same benefits as those coming in on a licence. But we need to control it and make sure that the ones that are coming in are vital for Guernsey.
Andy Taylor.
Now, unlike Mr Meerveld, I didn't support this policy when it came to the state's last term. I have some concerns that we're aiming more for workforce size instead of considering, dare I say, the bed value. So for each bed that is on the island, if it has a worker in there, what is that worker contributing to the island? So focusing, so we actually have people that bring in the biggest bang for the buck. But I don't deny that we need to bring people into work. There are roles that the island cannot fulfil itself. But we need a much more considered approach to how we decide who can get a licence.
Jonathan Wilson.
I think one of the problems is the dependency ratio is worsening. So we have more retirees, we have fewer workers, and we have rising care costs. And you can't tax your way out of that demographic reality. We need productive people. We need them to be contributing to the system. And as we've heard, the limiting factor is not who we want, it's whether we have somewhere to put them, a bed. So fix the housing supply is probably one of the first things. But I think to finish, Guernsey built its prosperity on being open to the world's capital, and I think we should be open to the world's talent as well.
Stephen Ruxell.
We're never going to be able to get away from bringing in some people to do some jobs, but we do need to establish a maximum population load that the island can accommodate. This number needs to be dynamic. Maximum load should consider economic needs, social acceptance, so what do people want? Infrastructure planning, so what do we think we're going to have in the future? It needs to understand dwelling availability, going back to Andy's point about beds. Because if we don't have that, what we get is dwelling cost inflation, which is what we're currently living through, based on the fact that we've been living on a number of 300, but getting 1,000 in every year, with no corresponding houses being built.
Sam Haskins.
A lot of the points have already been made. There is an element of migration that we will probably always need. I did mention a figure, so it's 2,000 people in 2 years. And that is 20 years worth from our tax review projections. So that's not right, and something needs to change. So I do support the urgent review. And I think I'm edging towards a more skills-based or at the very least targeted migration, because the cost of increase in rental, that's the main one, is so much.
Okay, the next question will come from Caroline McManus.
Thanks. If you're elected, you're going to be making decisions on loads and loads of topics, and you've been trying to answer them today. You're going to have to find out what other people are thinking, perhaps what the population is thinking, perhaps what other states members are thinking. Are you going to just look at online discussions, online conversations? Are you going to listen to people in the states? How are you going to be able to ensure that you know what's the right decision to make and actually make the decision that's best for the island's future?
Can we also take a question that Cathy Bruce has submitted, because it's very similar, and I think it would be useful for the candidates to address both at the same time. Is Cathy in the audience?
So my question really was, if you are elected, all the committees are now filled, so what are you going to achieve?
Okay, so I think they're quite similar. Let's have, each candidate can have a minute to answer this question, since it's sort of
they're different questions.
2 in 1.
Do them separately, they're different questions, Matt.
You're not back in the States yet, Mr. Taylor. Just right, Jonathan Wilson.
I don't think there's too many snap decisions that people have to make. So I think you can research, and it's part of my job to research things. So coming up with what's worked in other places in the world, maybe a bit further away than Jersey. So for instance, things like planning ahead, longer planning. We can look at New Zealand. They look to plan infrastructure and various other things over 30 years instead of about 4 locally, it seems to me. Scotland tends to direct, or has a policy now that it directs procurement spending towards local economic benefit. So instead of money going out of Scotland or away, it stays in the local community, and I think that's one thing that we're probably a bit poor on here. But to come back to the question that was asked, I think that you read widely. You try and find out.
Ross LeBrun.
As I've sat on a committee, ESS, I know how important it is to actually have a seat on a committee, because you build working relationships with people and you learn things. So the first thing I would do is politely ask people that are sat on multiple committees if they would like to give up a seat, to allow me to actually give an input for best value for the taxpayer, because it's pointless me just being a backbencher as such. But even if I couldn't get that, I know my ideas will need to be put as requests and amendments, and I know that they'd need public backing before I could even get anyone to sign on up to those. So I do have a plan. I'm been raring for this for a long time. I've got stuff that I want to do, and even if I don't get in the committee, I know I can do something with it.
Stephen Ruxell.
I have a very long list of economic policies and other policy areas that I'd want to achieve. I'd certainly build on the existing networks that I have from lobbying on behalf of business for the last 10 years, the current sitting deputies who are in the committees and working with them. I'd very much like to see quite a lot of change in the economic space, simply because I'm very sorry to say, but I think we're entering into a global economic recession shortly, probably stagflation. And I think some of the policy ideas that I've got are very much going to help with that. And so I would make it my business to do that.
Luke Graham.
Personally, I didn't support this. I wouldn't have done it. I would have just given it to the next person who voted on the last election. So I didn't agree with this whole thing anyway. So obviously we're not going to be able to make much impact because we're not sat on certain committees. But I think for me personally, it'd be a settling in period to, get to know the other candidate, other deputies, and build some allegiances and start, making my way towards what I stand for, which is, everyone knows, it's all to do with population, keeping Guernsey as it is, as it was, and protecting our own and putting ourselves first. So I'm not going to change how I feel. So whether I'm on a committee or not, I'll still be there banging that drum.
Tamara Mentishvili.
I may be small, but I have a big voice. I am determined to meet with the Douzaines, at least, or representatives of the Douzaines, at least once a month. I know there's a quarterly meeting, which I think the the Policy and Resources do, but I think that's not enough. I certainly think that regardless of whether you sit on a committee or not, if I had my way, everybody who gets elected must sit on a committee. Otherwise, you're a backbencher and you're not there for adding value. I would attend every single meeting that's offered that needs to be coming before a state's meeting, but I think getting out to the public and ensuring people are heard, that's part of the lesson. Not everybody's on social media. I only joined Facebook a few weeks ago. Got 3 propositions for marriage. It's just one of those things. So I think communication is incredibly important. It's 2 ways. If I also had my way, you'd hear from me more often.
Andy Taylor.
Well, I would put myself forward for any committee position that comes available. I'd be happy to work with any committee. If I was in today's States meeting, to give you an example, I would have been asking why my successful amendment for the construction of temporary accommodation for locals had been changed into the construction of a temporary construction workers village, because I wouldn't agree with that. In terms of how I would make the right decisions, I always accept that a right decision for one person on the right of the room is going to be a wrong decision for someone on the left-hand side of the room. So I like to research the issue, speak with the people that it's going to affect, and try to explain to them, generally in more depth, because I hate to say this, but most of the time as a deputy, you understand the issue more superficially than a lot of the public. That's not always the case, but explaining the actual issue and why you are inclined to vote a certain way, so they explain to understand why you've made a decision. It doesn't make it the right one. You can never always have the right one, but you can approach it in that way to hopefully bring people along with you.
Rob Harnish.
Before I was a teacher in Guernsey, I was a research scientist, so I can guarantee that I'm going to do my homework. But more importantly, my whole campaign is based on my ears, your voice. I already do a lot of constituency work. You don't have to be in the States to listen to people and bring their cases to the deputies. And I think out of the 37 we currently have, probably 31 of them have already had some kind of engagement with me on a constituency issue. You should never underestimate the power of the backbenchers, because they are the people that connect the people in the committees together. They're the people who move from one issue to another and make sure that the services join together to meet real needs. And that's what I intend to do.
Sam Haskins.
excuse me, it is one of our jobs to research, and it's one of our jobs to reach out and gather as much opinion from stakeholders and everyone. So, and you know what? We don't do enough, candidates, deputies don't do enough, certainly physically. So that I think does need to change. But if anybody phones me, I've always said, please go, I'll have a coffee. And if I can't, the principles of which I make decisions are fairness, integrity, accountability. So if I haven't gathered that support, I have core values that I do stick to. In terms of accountability, I actually think the backbencher role is really important. I didn't really used to, but I really do think from an accountability point of view, I think you could be a real thorn, and really when you're laying amendments and focusing on saving, that backbencher role is really important.
Nikki Simmons.
I actually think the backbencher role has a lot to offer, and I think it gives you an opportunity to stand back, to listen and to question. And I think I'd be really on that, and I'd offer myself to join the scrutiny committee. I'd look for project work. I'd look to join subcommittees, and I'd be open to join any committee at any time. I also think you've got more time to listen to people when you're actually on a backbench. So I would hold drop-in clinics. I'd be available to speak to people, and I would use my communication skills that I've built up over numbers of years to actually get out there and get to know what people are thinking and represent their voice back in the States through questions.
Carl Meerveld.
To answer the first part of the question, in forming an opinion, you do independent research. So I used to run investment research companies in Asia and America, but we also reach out to the stakeholders, the people who are actually directly impacted by it or have specialist knowledge. And sometimes they'll reach out to you as a deputy, or sometimes you need to approach them and get their opinions and get their insights into not just what's the right decision technically, but what's the right decision in the Guernsey context. Speaking to the second part of the question, what can you contribute as a backbencher? I think the most impactful things that I've done in the past were done as a backbencher. Campaigning against GST was done independent of committees. Campaigning for island-wide voting was done in independent committees. Coming up with the idea of a wind farm was done independent of committees. So that backbench role, you can contribute, and in some ways more so than if sitting on a committee. Thank you.
Julianne Headington.
I'm in a unique position where I'm standing with Full and Guernsey, so I can support my party colleagues. So we've got housing, ESS and PNR. I've actually been involved in the background in government for the last year, so I've got a knowledge of what's going on. Having done the campaigning, I've heard some incredible stories and diverse opinions on what the island wants and what the island needs. Now, I think one of the questions I was asked was the Forward Guernsey Manifesto, which is based on over 50 members of the community contributing towards it. How do you stand? I said, I stand with the manifesto, but anybody that knows me, 22 years working in a man's world, I've got my own opinions, and I do have a bit of a mouth on me. So something I don't agree with from the back bench, I will be standing up and saying what I feel.
Okay, the next question is about expenditure priorities and is from Sue Vermeulen.
In the Guernsey press recently, Richard Diggar pointed out how much money is going to have to be spent for the pensions for the civil service in the future, and how much left there is for the rest of us. What do members of the panel think about this, and how can this be sorted out? Because it's simply not fair.
Andy Taylor. You're back to 45
pensions.
seconds, by the way, now.
What? Sorry,
you're back to 45 seconds.
45 seconds. That started already, or
starting now.
I mean, I'm struggling because I haven't read Richard Diggar's article on that. I find he often points out the problems without giving any real solution. In terms of civil service pensions, there's contractual obligations. It's very difficult for a deputy to get involved. They are entitled to certain payments. So I'd be very careful in in engaging in that way. It's a job for PNR. There is a representative that deals with the civil service and pensions in particular. And any hint of pension changes can result in big arguments that go to appeals and tribunals that can absorb an awful lot of time. So I would deal with it very carefully, I guess, is the answer.
Ross LeBrun.
If it's written in their contract, there's not really a lot anyone can do about it right now, apart from change contracts, which I believe they have been already. But other than that's a legacy issue that is just going to have to sort of work its way out now. But yeah, that's it.
Julianne Headington.
Listening to the comments regarding the civil service on the panel tonight, whilst there have been issues on specific projects, I think the slagging off the civil service scale, I think, is unfair. It does seem to create an us and them situation. Regarding the pensions, like Russell was saying about within contracts, is there cuts we can make elsewhere to top up the pensions? It's unfair. I don't know enough about it to come up with a solution. But I hear what you're saying, and something needs to be done and looked into.
Carl Meerveld.
I think your question was the personal pensions that we receive from the state versus the civil service pension. We have to remember they're actually two separate pots of money. So the personal pensions that we receive at retirement age is granted by the states of Guernsey. The pensions for the civil service are contributed by their members through and the states through contributions over time. The civil service pension needs reviewing how it functions. And it's worth noting that if GST does come in, they get an automatic uplift because of inflation, which won't necessarily be applied to the population of Guernsey. So I want to see more generous pension contributions for the people of Guernsey, and I want to see that pension arrangement for civil service revised.
Stephen Ruxell.
There are various things that can be done on public service pension reform. I believe there is a list of about 5 things that were originally being looked at, and I think they're about halfway through the list. For me, more importantly, what I'd quite like to see is the civil service pension part of it, however, whatever part is deemed appropriate, invested into the island, rather than simply allocated outside the island. We've got a pot of 1.9 billion not being used, and I'd quite like to see some of that invested into Guernsey businesses.
Tamara Menteshvili.
Whether you know it or not, Guernsey States is the largest employer on the island, with over 6,500 people employed, of which 20% are administrative staff in the civil service in the States, with approximately 47%, which are executive grade. I'd have a look at that and see if it's proportionate, if it does produce the right and appropriate cost effectiveness in having such a top-heavy hierarchical approach. With regard to pensions, as was already stated, there's sort of 2 separate pots, and they've introduced the secondary pension scheme, which all employers should be adopting by now, to provide a more secure future for individuals.
Nikki Simmons.
So, as far as I know, the state's pensions are fully funded, and also they are a contractual right. So it would be a very difficult thing to sit here and comment on changing anybody's pension, I believe, within the civil service. It's not something that you can change overnight. It's not something that I believe is even on the cards to change. So, to be honest with you, I think we'd need to really talk to a pension expert on that, and it's not something that I would want to comment on changing or believe that we can change.
Jonathan Wilson.
If we can't change them contractually, which is unlikely, I think the first thing we need to do is not make it worse. Carl was right, they are inflation-linked pensions, and my calculations run somewhere between £2 and £3 million a year that GST would create an even worse situation for us, a better situation for them when they actually start drawing their pensions. But £2 to £3 million from a GST agreement just makes no sense to me. So we need to have the growth, we need to have the investment. We don't need to have the GST.
Sam Haskins.
I agree that it's a legacy contract issue. However, I don't think that's something to really stop and go, okay, if there is an unfairness. And one thing I do think is unfair is that the senior leadership do not have the civil service code and disciplinary and capability policies. I think they should be. So when you're looking at, can I put that in? That's when contract negotiations start. But what I would say is that we need to focus on a stable population, a stable workforce, and an economy that provides the services that we do want and need.
Luke Graham.
I don't know enough about pensions and things, so I'm not going to pretend that I do. I know that I like Bowley Smiley, and he's in there now. He's taken extreme leadership. He said that everything that's happened before is now his fault, even though it isn't, but he's taken that and he's going to move forward with it, and I think he's going in the right direction. We need to believe in him, and if there's a way of changing it, I don't know, maybe we get Peter Fairbrush and Sam's mum on the case and take these people to court to get them to change it.
Rob Harnish.
I'm outside my area of expertise, but I think insurance schemes are what pension schemes are. And in a sense, the money that is going to pay those civil servants is money that they have contributed, plus the statutory contribution. So I don't think there is a case to be made even for challenging contracts. The real issue is whether that needs to be there as an incentive to attract people to work to the civil service. There is no reason why we can't change the contracts so that the pension scheme is different going forward. That is, we offer a different type of pension to incoming staff.
Okay, Angus Bodman has a question which is responding to some of the things the candidates have said so far.
Thank you. I understand from the candidates' responses that they almost universally reject GST. They support a static population despite the fact that the population is ageing. And they're relying on the identification of efficiencies and the elimination of waste to fund the deficit that we are faced with. They also sing the praises of this delightful island that we all enjoy. And I wondered whether the candidates could express a view as to whether they would support a wealth tax, given that we have no IHT and no capital gains tax in the island. Thank you.
Nikki Simmons.
You've come to me first. That's a shame on this one, Matt. To be honest with you, wealth tax is something I'd have to look at more. I have heard a lot about it on my way around. Some people have said there should be a wealth tax in, but I'm not going to sit here at this point and give you a particular answer on that one because I need to know and understand more about that. So I'm going to be totally honest and say that is something that I think needs discussion and I would need to learn a lot more about before I could give you a solid answer on wealth tax.
Jonathan Wilson.
I'm not against static population. I am against static population, actually, Angus. Thank you. I think the wealth tax is a problem. So it's another blunt instrument. It'll scare off the entrepreneurs, it'll scare off the people that have come here to build businesses, to earn good money, and I think that's the opposite of what the financial services sector stands for. And if we are going to get AI companies, data companies, etc., coming in, they're going to be coming here in order to create wealth. And I think if you say you're going to tax them with a wealth tax, I think they'll jurisdictional shop and they'll go elsewhere potentially.
Andy Taylor.
I suppose I should start by saying I don't particularly object to GST or GST Plus. I can't give a full commitment because I don't know exactly what the proposals will be. But I don't object to GST as a way of diversifying our tax base. In terms of the population, I'm not necessarily pushing for a static population. In my manifesto, I speak about how we need to make better use of our existing housing stock in order to house people that need to come in that could increase our tax revenues. In terms of a wealth tax, during one of the debates last term, I engaged with Treasury to look at what we could do as an alternative, so increasing the rate of GST but increasing the threshold, so it became a bit more of a wealth tax. So put it at 10%, but it only kicks in at £2,000 spends.
Rob Harnish.
Wealth tax is a big umbrella that covers an awful lot of things. In its favour for me is that it is a progressive tax. That is, that it does the least damage to the poor and actually calls people who have more than they need to pull their fair share of work in the community. I think a lot of people who contribute wealth taxes in some areas actually feel the benefit of that and recognise that their contribution makes a difference. So yes, I'm for a wealth tax. I would need to be very careful to articulate precisely what wealth tax I would like to support. Probably not something I'd do in 45 seconds.
Sam Haskins.
I too am not against population growth per se. I'm against uncontrolled migration. I think that one is something that I'd be voting against. But we've seen 2,000 in 2 years. That's too much. In answer to your question, would I support a wealth tax? I mean, I don't think I could sit here and say never, but I don't know what type of wealth tax that you're after, that you're referring to. But what I am really wanting to focus on is cutting waste. So those people coming to the island, for example, having a compulsory insurance scheme, a health insurance scheme.
Luke Graham.
Yes, I am in favour of a wealth tax. That sounds great. If you're really wealthy, then we need to tax you a little bit more. I think we've got lots of taxes that we can bring in. Capital gains tax, we can bring it in slightly, maybe just 1%. You know, spread it over a few things. Wealth tax, a capital gains tax that's small. There's a couple of other little taxes that we can slip in there that the big players and the $1 billion companies and the $1 million companies can afford, and I don't think we'll scare them away. I think a lot of them, you know, and if we do, we'll find new people who like it here in Guernsey and who are willing to pay their way towards what they get here, and those who aren't, then let them go.
Carl Meerveld.
I would be very concerned about a wealth tax and looking at introducing it. One of the problems that all governments have is they're very good at making broad sweeping decisions, but then having unintended consequences. So our immigration policy is a prime example. My concern it would be that long term, would it negatively impact Guernsey in that we are competing with the Isle of Man and Jersey to attract businesses and high net worth to the island. If we've got a tax that they don't have, in the long term, will those employers and investors go to another jurisdiction rather than Guernsey? So that's the kind of issue I'd look at, and you'd need to look at and analyse what the potential danger is in introducing a tax like that out of step with other jurisdictions. Thank you.
Julianne Headington.
Hi, Angus. I don't know enough about wealth tax, but what I would do is remove the tax cap, because apparently at the moment it's 1.6 million earnings, and above that you're not taxed. And also, when people come to the island, they have automatic entry into our access to our secondary health system. That should be paid for. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Tamara Mentishvili.
You only have to look across the waters, either to the UK, who are intending to bring in a wealth tax or threatening to do so, to see how everyone's just scattering, or to France, where they actually have a wealth tax, and most of the people that have high net worth, the entrepreneurs, etc., they've all moved to either Brussels or Monaco. So, you have to think about that in the larger context. I would also examine where there are no income taxes in certain countries, like Bermuda, and what do they have instead? Payroll tax, customs and excise tax. Other forms of taxes are available. I know territorial tax was rejected just recently, which is fair enough, but do not sell short Guernsey's unique selling points, and one of them is our tax structure.
Ross LeBrun.
I'm not a tax expert, believe it or not, but also I'm not standing on a mandate that I would be looking to change taxes. But the island has to be very careful to remain competitive with other places, other jurisdictions that wealth can go and sit. So I am open to looking at anything, but I rely on experts to guide me.
Stephen Ruxell.
Just a few points of clarification. With regards to GST, I understand the benefits in principle. The thing I'm against is bringing in economic friction during a time of economic stagnation. So that's my biggest concern. Immigration-wise, I suggested bringing in a dynamic number that monitors what's available and what we can bring in. With regards to wealth tax, I'm the only person on this stage who suggested making a change to the tax caps by bringing in an investment qualification criteria. I believe we can remain competitive with our closest competitors because there is a little headroom currently. We do have a little bit of play in that insofar as I believe Jersey's is slightly higher than ours. So I think with that investment, it's not a tax. We're simply asking, it's fairly useful way.
Okay, we have a question from Andre Austin about sentencing policy.
My question is around law and order, and I just wonder whether the candidates think that current sentencing guidelines for sex offenders and paedophiles is appropriate, and whether their views on this are in line with what the population think.
Luke Graham.
Well, it's a joke, isn't it? People like nonsense, people who are touching children and ruining children's lives are getting 2 and 3 years, and lads who are bringing in a bit of weed are getting 7 years or 8 years. It's an absolute disgrace. I can't even believe some of the stuff that comes out. So I completely agree with you that it needs review, it needs changing. It's archaic, and it's disgusting, isn't it? It's absolutely disgusting. There's paedophiles walking our streets who a year, 2 years ago did something to a kid over here. It boils me blood. I want to kill him when I see him. Horrible.
Rob Harnish.
I haven't read our sentencing guidelines, but I would be very surprised if they weren't drawn on guidelines from large jurisdictions where they're constantly and regularly reviewed. Whether they're well applied is something I can't answer. What I worry about is that it's very easy to have a gut emotional response to some issues, and paedophilia is certainly one of those, which means we don't look at the cases close enough to make sure that the guidelines are being well applied and that people who are being released as they should be because they are safe. In the end, our prison service is about rehabilitation. That's the basis of our culture.
Sam Haskins?
I don't know, really. I don't know. Like some of the other gentlemen, I couldn't say yes, because it seems to me that sometimes it's not fair and it's not proportionate. It's out of kilter. That's what it seems to me. And I do believe that many people in Guernsey are saying, hang on a minute, how come that and not that? So it doesn't seem proportionate. And I think there's a higher expectation of that. That's what I think. But like already said, I don't know, so I'd have to look at it.
Nikki Simmons.
Yes, I'm going to echo Sam there as well. I think it's something we'd have to look very carefully into before we give an opinion on that, because it's something that, standing as a new states member, you look into these things and you kind of learn on the job, and trying to make a decision or have an opinion on this very sensitive issue at this point in this kind of environment is incredibly hard. But yes, I think it would need to be looked at, but I'm not going to be able to answer you fully, I'm afraid, on that one.
Carl Meerveld.
Thank you. I take Rob's point about the fact that we take sentencing guidelines from other jurisdictions. I'm also with Sam on that I don't know enough about this subject. But I've never seen a policy letter in the States. I'm not sure how the sentencing guidelines are actually derived, because I've never seen a policy letter in my 9 years where deputies were asked to opine on sentencing guidelines. That, to me, is something that's done through the courts. And I don't know enough about that specific subject. It's not something I've looked at, but it's something I certainly would be happy to do so if people want that taking into consideration. Thank you.
Julie Ann Headington.
Okay, this is something that I'm passionate about. I work at victim support and we log the sentencing results when someone's found guilty. There is no logic to it. They're not strong enough. Every case should be held in the Royal Court where every sentence is above 2 years and the fine is above £10,000. And the sentencing policy should be looked at to increase those sentences. And anybody that's not local that has been found guilty should be deported. Thank you.
Ross LeBrun.
I agree sentencing should be much harsher, but it also needs to be looked at because it's clearly not a solution to the problem because these people are hardwired to do these things. The UK have recently been looking at voluntary chemical castration, and I'd be open for something like that to actually take that drive away from them. I actually heard an interview with someone that wasn't a paedophile, but they were a violent offender, and they volunteered themselves to be chemically castrated, and they said it's changed their life around. So that is an option because putting them in prison longer is just costing the taxpayer more for something that they've done that's disgusting. So there needs to be a better option than just putting them in prison and hoping that they don't do it again when they get out again, because it's just inevitable that...
Jonathan Wilson.
I'm similar. I haven't read the guidelines, unfortunately. I don't know whether I'm aligned with the population on this at all. I have no idea what proportionate would mean here. So, is it on legal precedent? Presumably yes. Is it on how many images or whatever it is? I have no idea. But I think proportionate would be a weird thing. Obviously, we think that they're a blight on society and they should get the book thrown at them. I think probably most of us think that. But proportionate, I don't know.
Stephen Ruxell.
I feel like I should declare a conflict of interest insofar as without the sentencing guidelines, none of us would be sat here. But in all seriousness, I think that any sentencing needs to follow natural justice. There needs to be proportionate, fair and consistent, most importantly, consistent application. My understanding is current guidelines is based on UK case law and looked at on a case-by-case basis. So perhaps consistency is what's missing. But I can't really comment any further than that.
Tamara Mentishvili.
Yes, I think that there is a review that took place, I think, in 2024 to ensure that probation is given or parole is given after a length of term is half of a sentence is served. So I think that was a very positive move because that was a bit of an arbitrary application. There is case law in most cases where there is no precedence beforehand. I don't think they make it up as they go along. Was that sentence just recently applied strict enough? I couldn't really say. But at the same time, you have to look at different types of crime and whether our facilities is in Nicole Prison able to reform offenders. I think in most cases, yes, but don't know.
Andy Taylor.
So I have the benefit of having sat on the Committee for Home Affairs last term, having an involvement in bringing before the states expanded definitions, sort of changes in sexual offences legislation. What I would say, though, is although politicians can have an influence in sentencing policy, I think any influence of politicians in the judiciary is something that should be exercised with extreme caution. But I think on the specific point you made, is sex offence or child sex offences the comparison with, say, a drug sentence? I said yes, they seem disproportionately lenient for child sex offences, and so I would support change there. But I would also raise the question: is it a case that the sentencing for drug offences is too high?
Okay, it's pretty much exactly 9 o'clock, I think. So we will leave it there. If you have not heard enough from these candidates yet, and you haven't heard our interviews with them on the Guernsey Press Politics podcast, then please go to guernseypress.com. I interviewed all 11 candidates, and they are still available. We will have extensive coverage of the by-election itself. Polling day is a week today, on the 29th of April. I think the registration closes this Friday, but presumably if you're interested enough to be here tonight, you're all registered. There are 4 polling stations at Beausejour, St Martin's Parish Hall, the Catel Deuxaine Room, and the Vale Deuxaine Room. So it leaves me only to say a few thanks. Thank you to our Guernsey Press staff, who have been running around with microphones and doing various other things. Thank you. Thank you to On Screen Creations, who have streamed this event live on the Guernsey Press Facebook page, and Centre Stage, who have provided our audio this evening. And thank you to Stephen and his colleagues at Les Beaucamps High School, who have prepared the facility this evening. We can't finish at Guernsey Hustings without Gordon Young having his say, and he's got his hand up. So, yeah. No. No, I would never forget you, Gordon. But I apologise that we can't have any more questions because we've reached the end of our time. We do.
Yes, we can. No. Come on, Gordon, come on.
I'm the oldest person, I think, in this hall. I'm 92, and I've stood for deputy.
Okay. Hold on. Wait there. Do the candidates want?
I did very rude.
Please,
Wait there. Hold on, Gordon. Do the candidates want to take one final question from Gordon?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. By
My
popular
question,
demand,
thank
Gordon, you may ask your question.
I'll be as brief as possible. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for attending and standing as deputy is an awkward thing to do. But this business about Guernsey owing millions, or the states of Guernsey being in debt by millions, hasn't just happened this last 4 or 5 years. I've been moaning at the states ever since I was demobbed in 1956. Half of you, or most of you, wouldn't have been born yet, and I've been treated like a bit of dirt. And I mean dirt. And that's why I stood for deputy myself. But we should not be in debt at all. This started 60-odd years ago. It's not the states of today, but you've got into a position now, you've got to try to cure what happened 60-odd years ago.
So the question is how to sort out Guernsey's public finances.
Yes.
Ross LeBrun.
Well, I think personally the states of the past got very comfortable, maybe not as long back as what you're saying, but with the finance industry, and left everything else basically, or neglected a lot of other industries and took a lot of focus away. I think we need to be sort of, especially with the emergence of AI, we need to be looking at investing into other industries, more affordable space for small businesses to start, so that we can nurture local young entrepreneurs that develop and bring new ideas. But yeah, we need to look at investing in other industries.
Stephen Ruxell.
I'd echo Ross. Obviously, I've set out several times now what I think we need to do to invest into the real economy, into the construction sector, into technology, innovation. With regards to managing debt, I think we very much need to grow the real economy, and that will sort things out. Look after the pennies, pounds take care of themselves.
Nikki Simmons.
So yes, I think we're back to this tax situation again, talking about this. I think it's been kicked down the can and down the road for a long, long time repeatedly. Nobody really wanted to make the really tough decision of how we tax people further. I still think we've got a real issue about trying to raise those funds to fill that deficit in a quick, timely manner. I still think GST Plus, if it was done fairly and supported people who are lower income and on pensions, is the quickest possible way to probably restore the money pot. I think we've got some really good initiatives, but I don't think we're at the point where we can say that they will actually be able to deliver. So I think it's been it's an unfortunate position to
Rob
be in for
Harnish.
us.
Anyone who's ever had a mortgage knows that debt isn't always a disaster. The problem is making the regular payments to clear it, and that's where we've fallen down. There was a time, particularly after the war, when we did need some money, and it wasn't wrong for us to borrow. What we failed to do is pay back. And the only way when you've got a big debt is to actually look at how much you can afford to pay, figure out how many years you can pay it back over, and actually just get it done.
Carl Meerveld.
I'm very much of the generation of cut your cloth according to your means. So I believe that you should try and avoid debt as much as you can, as an individual, as a company, as a government. It's worth noting, though, actually, Guernsey's level of debt is very low compared to Jersey and other Western governments, so we are quite prudent on that. And another thing that Guernsey, I think, has done right, what debt we have taken on, we've tried to look at linking it to a method of repayment. Now, anybody who wants to buy a house in this day and age, our children will want to take out a mortgage. Debt is not bad inherently, as long as you can afford to pay it back. I personally will always try and avoid increasing debt, whether it's national, personal, or business. But
Tamara Menteshvili.
At 92, if ever I reach that age, I wish I had your gumption. I would suggest an economic recovery plan, not just another plan, but something very specific with very specific targets and timeframes and how it's going to be implemented, some action plans, looking at particularly the main sectors. I mean, finance sector contributes 40% of our economic output. What can we do to help them to grow and stay? They're leaving, and they left here, and they've come back, some of them, but they're going. What do we do about tourism and hospitality? That's the next thread, because that is an incredible important part of our culture and fabric. And then looking at new opportunities. There'll be an article very shortly in the paper, which I've presented some of the ideas I've got.
Julianne Headington.
Gordon, I'm ashamed as a Guernsey person that you feel that you've been treated like shit. Everybody on this island should be seen and heard and taken care of. I don't know what the fix is, but if I get elected, I will do the damnedest I can. And can we have a chat afterwards, please? Thank you.
Sam Haskins.
So the same problems have been going on a long time, and maybe that is the problem with consensus government. And let's hope there's not another war, because our taxes could go very high. I think what I would say is I will do my best to cut waste, to make savings, to look for opportunities, and to try and get us to live within our means.
Andy Taylor.
I think it's important to start by saying that I don't think we're the only society that is facing this problem, but we are in a fairly good position regardless. We have a fantastic economy already, but that poses another problem, that it is difficult to grow the economy. It's already at an exceptional capacity relative to our size. So in terms of how do we sort Guernsey out, it's a bit of everything. It's revenue raising, it's expenditure restraint, and accepting that we might not be able to provide everything that we currently provide.
Jonathan Wilson.
I think you're absolutely right. The housing crisis, the deficit crisis, long time in the making. Nothing's crept up and grabbed us without us noticing it's coming. We've all seen house prices. I think the problem seems to be the long-term thinking or inability to think long-term. If we're only thinking 4 years, then there's nothing to look forward to. There's no future. There's no infrastructure projects. And I think let's not buy lowest unit cost off island. Let's have a treasury function that works and considers local economic benefit. That's a massive one, so to stop money going off the island. We need to invest. If they're community-owned projects, if the states can't work out how to invest long-term, maybe it's time to look at different vehicles.
Luke Graham.
All right, good. I'm not so sure that we're in as much debt as we keep being made out to be in. I did a little bit of research a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know, each year on year, it seems to be, we're going to be 20 million deficit, and then we end up plus 10 million. And then 2021 was, there's going to be a 20 million deficit, and we ended up plus something million. So I'm not so sure we're in as bad of a financial position, but I haven't got all the figures. But I think it's been too many years of deputies getting in there and just wanting to line their own pockets and do what's best for them and their trust companies, your Linden Trotts, your other people who've made millions over the years by influencing and having a say. And I think that needs to stop. And the only way to stop that is get people like me in.
Okay, thank you very much to those of you who have been here this evening and have been watching online. And thank you to the 11 candidates who have answered your questions. I think we should give them a round of applause. And good luck next Wednesday, and good evening, everyone.
Thank you very much, Matt.